Ukraine's president is on his way back home this hour, returning to word of yet another attack by Russia on his country. Officials in the southern region of Kherson say at least one person died and several others wounded in an attack on residential areas as well as medical and educational facilities. Zelenskyy returns to Ukraine with a pledge from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of $650 million in additional Canadian aid over the next 3 years. His brief one-day visit to Canada wrapping up in Toronto last night at a rally of Ukrainian Canadians.
Slava Ukraini!
On social media earlier today, Zelenskyy spoke about the impromptu moment people at the event began singing Ukraine's national anthem. He said it was moving and calls Canadians with ties to Ukraine inspiring. CBC's Thomas Daigle was there.
Hundreds of supporters packing Toronto's Fort York Armory, Ukraine's president got a loud welcome. Capping off his whirlwind tour with a special message to those here with ties to his country.
Thank you, and I thank you all of you, that you are active. You let others feel Ukraine's vibe, the vibe of Slava Ukraini.
Earlier, Volodymyr Zelenskyy met with Canadian business leaders amid a series of stops to bolster support in North America. Police with sniffer dogs ensured tight security as the Ukrainian-Canadian community prepared to see Zelenskyy in person.
A lot of people have been touched by the war, obviously. All of us have friends and family that have lost someone.
Crowds arrived with a mix of emotions. For Zelenskyy, it would be a rare public event overseas since Russia's invasion. Among those invited, some were raised in Canada, remaining proud of their Ukrainian roots. Others fled Ukraine and have built a life here.
It means a lot. Actually, I saw him. I remember when he came as a comedian to Zaporizhia, and I was 8 years old. My mom took me to his a concert, I would say, and that was something big because I remember I was having flowers and I came to stage to give them to him.
For me, he's a legend.
Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, there are new reports that the White House plans to arm Ukraine with advanced long-range missiles to help Kyiv with its counteroffensive. This comes despite concerns in Washington about how Moscow might react. CBC's Dominic Velitis is in London and is following this part of the story for us. Dom, what can you tell us about these missiles that Joe Biden appears to be prepared to release to Ukraine?
Well, NBC News, The Washington Post and The Wall Street Journal are all now reporting that Joe Biden plans to give Ukraine the so-called Army Tactical Missile System, or TACMS for short. The latter news outlets suggesting they will be sent in the coming weeks. Now, neither the US nor Ukraine have officially confirmed any of these reports, but we do know that Kyiv has been pushing for these long-range missiles for several months now, in order to turbocharge its counteroffensive against Russian forces in the south of the country. A lot has been written about these missiles. They're perhaps not the wonder weapon that some have suggested, but they would certainly have an effect on the battlefield. As I say, they are long range and could therefore enable Ukraine to strike high-value targets throughout Russian-occupied territory and potentially severely disrupt Russia's logistics network, make it even harder for Moscow to resupply its troops on the front lines.
Dom, we're also hearing about this fairly significant Ukrainian attack on the headquarters of Russia's Black Sea Fleet in Crimea. What can you tell us about that?
Well, we've been hearing today from Ukrainian intelligence. Its head, Kirilo Budanov, has been speaking to Voice of America, and he's claiming that 9 people were killed and 16 others injured in yesterday's strike on Russia's naval HQ in Crimea, and that among those injured were 2 Russian generals. So a very different outcome compared to Russia's narrative following this strike, which is that just 1 military serviceman is missing as a result. We're told that a French Scalp missile, or its British twin, the Storm Shadow, was used to hit the building. The Army Tactical Missile System, one reportedly about to be sent to Ukraine, is a bit of a different beast to that. It has a longer range and is faster than the Storm Shadow Scout missile. It can be fired from the ground and can be manoeuvred during flight. So arguably, the Russians could find them even harder to shoot down than the one that got through its air defences in Crimea yesterday.
CBC's Dominic Velitis in London. Thank you, Dom.